I am back with my friend Anna James to discuss this year's Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. We had planned to make a video about the long list, but Anna is very busy. She has a new book that is just coming out, and she's been touring with another book, very busy author. The celebration for the winner of this year's Women's Prize for Fiction and Nonfiction will be happening very soon on June 12th, and we have now both read all of the 6 books on the fiction shortlist. So we are going to discuss our thoughts and feelings about the shortlist and our predictions or hopes for what might win this year. And so this year's shortlist, I just want to talk about it kind of generally, our general impressions overall first, and maybe some of your thoughts on the long list since we...
Yeah, because I ended up reading 9, so I've read the whole shortlist.
So quite a lot.
The long list defeated me, but the shortlist, I've read the whole shortlist plus 3 of the long list. So have I think a fair overview of the prize this year. I think we feel quite similarly.
Yeah, I think so. Whereas, it's always kind of tricky with book prizes because, I want to say first off as kind of disclaimer that, if I was reading all of these books outside of the prize context, and some of them I did read before the long list was even announced, I really enjoyed all of them. I think there's interesting, valuable things and entertaining things about all of them. But when thinking about them in a prize context, naturally we start to be a bit more critical about them because we're trying to figure out what is the best novel written in English by a woman in the past year, which is quite a high bar to put pit books against each other. And so my overall impressions is that all 6 of these books are good or very good, but I wouldn't say there's any book that sort of stands out to me as totally excellent. And when thinking about them compared to some other books that have been published in the past year that I've read, and some other winners of the Women's Prize for Fiction, I feel a bit sort of mixed about this year. But how do you feel?
I think essentially the same. I think it's been an overall strong year, in the sense of it's interesting to compare it to last year where we both found the long list a little bit bizarre and frustrating, and several books on the long list that I was like, but then some really, really exceptional books on the shortlist and a wonderful winner. Whereas this, I kind of had the opposite experience of cumulatively, I probably enjoyed the 9 books I read more than last year. You know what? There's 4 books that I wouldn't be mad to give a prize to, even if I wouldn't necessarily say they were at the level of something like Brotherless Night or Demon Copperhead. But I'm not mad about them being given a prize. I didn't enjoy all of them. There's one I quite actively disliked. And there's one that I sort of felt a bit shrug about. I think it is a travesty that A Little Trickery wasn't shortlisted, having read all 6 of these books. I think it is a travesty. It is my favourite of the 9 books that I read. And I think it's a scandal that it wasn't shortlisted.
I'm so happy to hear that, because I'd read that book late last year and was hoping it would be listed, and it was, but then it didn't sadly make the shortlist. And another book I loved from the long list so much was Nesting, and I thought that was incredibly powerful. Definitely recommend that, and was really sad that didn't make the shortlist either. But don't want to dwell on that too long, but just as saying our overall impressions.
I think especially because we didn't get a chance to make a long list video together. I feel like I need it to be on the record how I feel about A Little Trickery. I think it was fresh and exciting. I would have given it the prize personally of the 9 books that I read.
Wow.
But there we go.
Yeah.
So on to the books we do have. So we have a new version of the same system. So we did some categories last year, which we enjoyed, but Erica's let me do the categories this year.
Just as a way of, slightly different way of, kind of analysing the books and thinking about them in a slightly more critical way than we normally would just talk.
So we've made score sheets for each card. So our criteria are pure instinctive, how much I liked it. Because I think this often gets lost when things are divided into category. And it is arguably the most important thing. Are just pure instinctive gut reactions to a book are really why we read.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Writing style, self-explanatory. How well it achieves its own goals. I think it's always interesting to think about how well a book succeeds at what it is trying to do itself, because even sometimes if you don't like a book, you can be like, but I see that this is what the author was trying to do. I think that they did that successfully, even if it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Which I think often in prizes, that's like a relevant thing to think about. I wrote this one, because I put contribution to the form or to a conversation, but those are actually different things. So we can choose how we interpret that. Like contribution to the novel form, I think especially when you think about prizes, like is this doing something interesting from like a craft perspective? And then conversation is slightly different in terms of like, is it part of a conversation that isn't often done? Is it doing an interesting thing? But we can, as we go, we can see how we feel about that. And then finally, how much I would give it a prize, we would give it a prize over other books, which given that we're thinking about it in the context of the Women's Prize, I think is, like we're talking about, like lots of these books are very good, but like, would you actually slap a label on saying this is the best book by a woman, So those are our criteria. So we're going to work through the shortlist in alphabetical order.
Yeah.
And see what we both think individually, what our collective order is. And then we will talk about perhaps who we give the prize to and who we think. It's much harder when you don't have like a gut, like this is a book I love with my whole heart and I don't even care what other people think. This is what I want to win. Like
it's not like a Demon Copperhead year for me, whereas like this is clearly the winner. I think it's really difficult, but we'll maybe
I'm motivated mainly by the one I don't want to win. If you're any of these writers, don't watch this. I don't read good. I sometimes do read Goodreads reviews, and I always regret it. And I hate the idea of. I just feel like criticism of books, as in like not like being mean about them, as in like critiquing books, is a really valid thing, and it's not for authors. And I feel like as someone who exists on both sides of it, I think it's important that if people want to tear apart my books in a video, they are, like crack on, but I don't want to see that, And I just am filled with horror that someone who has spent time and effort and care writing something that's important to them, and then I'm like, I thought it was bad, and I did, and that's okay, but like I don't necessarily want to like have a direct conversation with them about that, or feel like it's not like I feel like this book shouldn't exist or anything.
Yeah.
So first on the list,
start with Good Girl, and obviously as we're talking about all of these, we'd love to know what you think about in the comments below, and if you agree with us or disagree with us, or have your own favorites to win, or how you felt about this year's prize overall. So please let us know all about that.
Yes.
But the very first book, Good Girl, which Anna actually predicted would be on this year's long list. So if this wins, then Anna can feel particularly chuffed about
predicting what? That's right, early on. Because this was one of my more wildcard ones.
And here it is
on the shortlist.
Yeah. We should probably also say at the start, we will almost inevitably get into some spoiler territory and talking about these books, and we'll assume that most people have read them or are familiar with the plot and story, so we won't get into that too much. It's just sort of talking about our overall impressions of it. And so do we want to start with the first?
Well, this is why I put this one first as well, because I think it's a good way to get into the head. It's essentially the headline, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of how much you just like this book as an individual reader. I really liked this. I thought, as a debut as well, it was a very like confidently written, in control of itself, very well done book. The plot line of like young woman, older man is like not necessarily the most interesting thing to me, but I did think of that genre, this did it in an interesting way. I think it being set in Berlin, in the party scene, and I think her background as the child of Afghan refugees did add like a different flavour to that. So even though that's not my sort of, like, I'm not drawn to those sorts of stories, I enjoyed this version of it more than I've enjoyed many other versions of that story. And I thought it was a very good a very strong debut.
And I mostly enjoyed it overall, although I get slightly exhausted with stories about self-destructive characters that are acting badly, that know they're making bad decisions, but at the same time, I entirely understand why and felt the pressure that she was experiencing from her family background and expectations, the loss of her mother, and feeling the pain of the loss of her mother, but still having complicated feelings about her mother, and the prejudice that she was aware of that occurred especially after 9/11 towards anyone from a Middle Eastern background living in other countries, so in Germany, and how she was basically trying to completely recreate herself and continuously recreating herself and kind of changing details about her life. I think as a way of kind of like experimenting with herself, but also hiding herself and showing her process of working through that. And a lot of the most poignant moments I found in this novel were to do with her photography and looking at images, both of herself, of images that she had taken of her mother before she died, and small moments of intimacy with her father, even though her father was quite critical of her. I just love so much. There's this like moment where she says that I think she's like trimming her father's eyebrows, and which is just such like an intimate thing and a kind of sweet thing to do. But at the same time, there's so much conflict and tension between them, and her relationship with the older man and the author, and her kind of idealization of him while still understanding that he's a very problematic person. I was less engaged with, and this like drug taking and party scene I found slightly exhausting. But yeah, overall I found the book engaging, and a new take on this kind of story.
Because I think that's an interesting word, because I found it does feel exhausting, this sort of like partying, but I feel like I guess that felt very purposeful. Like you're supposed to feel like you feel worn out along with her. And I did think it summoned that kind of Berlin party scene really well. She says like she's a regular on the Berlin party scene. I
was. What you imagine it's like. Or you've heard.
It certainly made me feel like I knew what it was like. Yeah, and like it's an engaging. I read it. I was very happy to pick it up and read it.
And I think it's also kind of relatable, even though it's a very particular story, but as a depiction of like young adulthood and understanding what the steps you should be taking in your life to kind of build towards, so-called like positive embodiment of adulthood, but maybe not having the confidence or the will, or feeling uncertain about taking those steps. And so I kind of related to it on that level as well.
And I actually would say I do think this shortlist on the whole is quite cohesive, in the sense of like there's a lot in this shortlist about mothers and daughters, about generational trauma, about
sexuality,
sexuality of young women in particular, although not always, and also about like the idea of a path laid out for you, and what happens when people, especially women, especially young women, deviate from that. And I did feel like, one thing I would say for it does feel cohesive. I was interested, a lot of the books are interesting in relation to each other. Like this is an interesting book in relation to the Persians, I think, for example.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, what are you going to give it for your just pure instinctive, how much you like it?
And we're going to rate each category out of 10.
Oh, yes,
I think so. I would give it, I think 7.
Oh, I thought you were going to go lower than that.
I'm quite a generous scorer as well. That's a trend with me.
I feel like from the discussion, I feel like I liked it more than you, and yet I was also going to give it a 7. So
that just shows we have different ways of.
Yeah.
I like to be nice.
Well, 7 is a good score, she says, as someone who, if someone gave my book 7 out of 10, I'd be like, how rude. Such, what's the word? What am I? I'm a hypocrite. That's it.
No.
As we always say, I think when we're discussing books in the context of a prize, it does feel like a slightly different scenario. And I, especially now as an author, would rarely probably be as nitpicky and critical of books publicly. But this feels like, you know, it's its own kind of bubble.
And we're taking it from the stance as if we were judges.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also with the context of these books being given a big boost of publicity from the prize, it's not like we're like, do you swear on your channel?
Yeah, it's fine.
I was gonna say, it's not like we're shitting on like debut literary fiction novels with no marketing budget that no one's ever heard of. You know? Okay, right. Writing style. I was really impressed. I thought this was such, as I said, admirable, but like I thought it was a very confident debut that felt really in control of itself. I would give the writing. I thought it had certain phrases as well where she just really beautifully sums up like feelings of feeling disconnected or, you know, just growing up and making bad decisions, but knowing that you're making bad decisions. I think she did it very eloquently and it felt confident and purposeful without feeling self-conscious. I would give the writing style an 8.
Ooh.
Yes.
And I would largely agree. And I think she, it's very confident, very in control of itself, writing style. Yeah, and I agree. There were certain lines that there was an incredibly funny line where she's talking about her friends and oh God, I forget what it is now. So I'm gonna paraphrase this line where she writes something like my friends were overly concerned with the writing of David Forster Wallace, but not concerned enough with deodorant. And I thought that was such a good read.
It does have that like very like good like spiky social commentary on the people who she encounters who like they think that she's like them, but she's experiencing this whole different way of living and experiencing life.
Yeah. So I would say 7 again.
Okay.
I would probably give it for a writing style.
You know what? I think this order is working well because this leads into how well it achieves what it's setting out to do. Because I think this book, I would probably give this a 9. I think this book does exactly what she is trying to do, which I think is very impressive. I think that we keep saying this, but like it feels very in control of what it's trying to do. It feels structured. It doesn't feel like it has like spare parts or things where it kind of loses track of what it's trying to do. It feels intentional, and I think it's a really impressive debut. And I think that the places it loses points for me are perhaps it doesn't quite have that like X factor, which is impossible to kind of sum up, and also just some of its themes are just not the things that I tend to read about, like, you know, like we've discussed like making bad decisions and kind of those relationships with terrible older men. But I think that for what it is, it's a very good example of what it is. So I would give it a 9 for how well it achieves what it's trying to achieve.
Yeah, and from what I assume is her central goal in this as a way of representing a young woman's experience and all the pressure on it, but also being cognizant and aware of the people around her and how they're going through their own issues, and how even though it primarily focuses on her experience, and that we have an understanding of the broader life around her. And so I think it is very confident, well done, and I would give it an 8 for that. Yeah.
Right, the next one, contribution to the form or to a conversation, which is where my category is falling apart, because there's, I would say like contribution to the form, I'm not sure it's like necessarily doing anything new. I think it's a good version of of its tradition, but I don't think it's pushing boundaries with it. Having said that, as a conversation, I think it's a really interesting addition, and I think the perspective of the setting in Berlin and her identity as a child of Afghan refugees is interesting. So I am hoisted by my own petard. I think, what do you think is more interesting as a criteria?
I mean, I think really the conversation it starts and what it's adding to because, you know, form, for writers obviously are very interested in form, and I feel like that's something that the Booker Prize focuses a lot more of, kind of like innovation of form of writing, or like the Goldsmiths Prize, that those prizes are really focused on much more on that aspect, or tend to be. Whereas I feel like the Women's Prize often focuses a lot more about the conversations that books start, and how they add to the general conversation about large scale issues, and looking at them from a different angle. That
I think you're right. Okay, so we're going to lean more to contribution to a conversation. Okay, in which case this scores higher, I think, than if it was form. It's also one of those ones that I will recommend this to people, I think. I can see it being an interesting book for lots of people. I would give this a 7.
Okay.
I don't think it's quite like innovative enough for me to rank it higher than that, but I think it is a worthy addition to the conversation.
And I was going to say the same, 7.
Yeah. Now, the big one. How much would I give it a prize over other books ranked out of 10? I know this is all, it's like sometimes this gets a little abstract, but like this is how my brain works more. I feel like if I have to sort out my brain thinking about whether I like books, this is more indicative of how I try to puzzle through this. So I would not be mad if this won, given the options. I think she's an exciting debut writer. I think it's a very good book. I think of the 6 that we're pulling from, it wouldn't necessarily be my first choice, but I wouldn't feel like a grand miscarriage of justice had been done. Having said that, it doesn't necessarily feel like it has like that X factor. So if I'm giving so 1 is like grand miscarriage of justice, 10 is this is the book I would give a prize to of these 6 books. I'm probably like hovering between a 6 and a 7.
And I was going to go with 6, which might make me seem a bit of a hypocrite after giving higher scores for all the other
this is
categories.
Relevant, and it's kind of its own. It's because the other categories are about it as a book, whereas we are thinking about it as part of a prize shortlist.
And and I agree. Like I wouldn't be mad if this won, but thinking about it in the context of all the other books out there, would I give this a prize? Well, no, I don't think I would.
If it won, I'd be like, okay, sure. That's how I would react.
Yeah, good for her.
So I'm going to go 6.
Yeah, I'll say 6 too.
Okay, next. We're going alphabetically. I try my best to match the fonts as well as I could.
They're very beautifully laid out. I'm impressed with it, rather than my shaky handwriting on a big bit of poster board.
I love a craft. Right.
Next, all 4s.
Miranda July, who I haven't enjoyed in the past.
Ah, okay. So have you read her fiction before, or seen her films before?
Both. No, that's not... Okay, I like her films. I didn't like the first Bad Man.
Ah, okay.
No, that's not even true. I admired it, but it was too much for me. But if you have been paying attention to my book taste for any length of time, things like I hated the Pisces, like that kind of very explicit, almost grotesque sort of thing. It just doesn't do it for me. But I love this.
Oh, okay.
I was really surprised by how much I liked it. And I think this is my favourite of the 6 books.
Okay.
I think. Just to give away the headline, I think if I was judging, this is probably the one I would be arguing for. Which just really surprised me because of a lot of what I didn't like that is still present in here, but there was just something about the book that got under my skin. I didn't like everything about it. I thought it took some turns that I was just okay, I don't know that we needed to go there. But there was something about the core discussion of women and shame and freedom and desire that I loved. And again, it goes against normally, I'm unrepentant. I don't usually like unlikable characters. I feel like it's supposed to, it's not cool to say that, but on the whole, I prefer a likable heroine. That I can empathise with and root for. But I loved her. No, I didn't love her. She's awful. But I was really rooting for her and I enjoyed being in her head. And I just found it quite it was so triumphant at the end. And I liked reading about a middle-aged woman. And the writing, I just thought the writing, like I will get onto that, but like on a sentence level, I thought it was really very, very good. I took pictures of like a lot of the writing. My phone is full of sort of highlighted like sentences. I text my friends a lot of the sentences. It really got under my skin in a good way.
Wow, that's great.
Unexpected success for me, this one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of critics would agree with you. It's just been like nominated for so many prizes.
Unexpected for me as my person.
Well, no, I know,
it's a very popular, successful book. I just wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did as a person. Yeah.
And it's just been interesting for me seeing it nominated for so many prizes, but then also seeing so many readers being really divided about how they feel about this book. I think probably more than any book on the shortlist. This is the book that has been really dividing different readers, where some hate it and some really embraced it and all it was doing. And I felt quite mixed about it. I think much less enthusiastic about it than you were. And for me, it was very much a book of two halves, where I really enjoyed and admired the first half, but the second half I struggled with a lot more. And but I know readers who felt completely the opposite way, that had issues with the first half, and then the second half appreciated.
That's interesting.
A lot more.
I did much prefer the first half. I really agree with you. I loved the first half, and I liked the ending very much. I did think the sort of third quarter for me, that's the bit I was kind of referring, like the whole kind of like sidebar with like the woman, I can't remember any of the character names, I read this ages ago now, the older woman, that whole kind of side quest, I was just a bit like, I don't really get what this kind of particularly adds to it. I didn't dislike it, but I was just a bit like, okay, yeah, cool, okay. But I love the first half. Honestly, the first 50 pages, I think are exceptionally good. And I love just the central conceit. Like, I think it's so funny, the idea of her going, like, the idea of doing this road trip and like getting stuck at the first motel that's down there. Like, I just think it delights me.
Yeah, it's almost like a misdirect as a description of the book, of a summary of the book, to say this is a road trip, and then instantly it's not.
It really delights me, that concept. I think that went a long way for how much it just delighted me as a thing that was happening.
And I felt I was glad that I've read her fiction before and had seen her films, so I feel like I was tuned into the kind of sensibility that I was going into, whereas I think some readers who might not have experienced her work before might have been a bit more blindsided by the tone of this book, which she has a very interesting way of approaching her subject matter, and there are definitely moments and scenes in this that I completely reveled in and enjoyed, and then others that I just felt were honestly like a bit tedious, that just weren't really working for me. Maybe this is because I'm a man, and so I don't experience this going through the menopause, and which this novel is, I think, dealing with quite a lot, and reading a certain point in like the mid to late 40s. But as someone in my mid to late 40s, I could relate to it on that level, and kind of looking back on your life, wondering what possibilities there still are for the futures of desires that are unexplored, and and dealing with all of that, and just certain moments where she comments how she can't get invested in doing physical exercise, because why invest so much time and energy into maintaining a body that eventually is just going to fall apart anyway, and so but then she does go through with that, and her body becomes more taut, and just love the whole thing in the beginning of transforming this motel room, this really like blank motel room, into her own special space. And
I did love about how much the book is about like the kind of physicality of being a woman, and how that can feel like such a trap. And I think that she really speaks that. It took me a little bit of a like fear as someone in their late 30s. I'm like, oh, menopause. Like, I was like, the way she talks about like the kind of like yearning to just like blow it all up, and like how some people are content and some people constantly feel discontent, I think spoke deeply to me in different places I've been in life. As someone who, I won't go into detail, but like as someone who like kind of lived a whole other life in my 20s and really did kind of like start again. A lot of that kind of stuff really like spoke to me, and that like desire to just blow it up and start again, as someone who kind of did that. So I really enjoyed how she articulated a lot of that kind of stuff.
And I also really appreciate the way she is grappling with nostalgia in this and looking back on her life. And there's small little like scenes and sections that's like she has that friend of hers that they every once in a while they go into a room together and collect all of the candy that they enjoyed when they were young and just sort of pick through the candy and are eating the candy as almost as a way of trying to like recapture that sense of being a child in a way that they feel like they can in the rest of their lives. I really connected with that as a moment of when like thinking back on my childhood and wanting to recapture like a sensation from it of wanting to really like go back there and which obviously as you get older and you've had more life experience, nostalgia becomes so much more a presence of everyday life.
I would probably give this a 9.
Oh, okay.
I really, really liked it. And it was one of those books that as I was reading it, I just was excited to pick it back up, and I felt great when I finished it, like I'd read something that had enriched my brain. So 9.
Whereas for me, especially because I struggled so much with the second half, and I would say it felt more inconsistent to me, and I was left feeling less satisfied than I was in the first half. I would probably give it a 6.
Okay. Right, and then we've touched on a lot of this sort of stuff. Writing style, I loved. Sometimes she does still tip into the things that I didn't like in the first Ban or like in the Pisces sort of things where I'm a bit like, it's so explicit and like not in a, I don't mind explicit stuff, but it is in like a real like squelchy way, isn't it? You know, and sometimes I'm just like, I didn't need the squelchiness,
Yeah.
But she also had several sentences that I was just like, love. So I'm going to give it an 8 because she loses a point for the squelchiness. That's actually, I think, quite a good way to sum up
squelchiness,
how she writes. So I'm going to give it an 8 for writing.
I would also give it an 8 because I think she's doing something so unique in her writing, especially in the style of treating all of her subject matter with absolute sincerity and seriousness, but at the same time somehow she is also kind of satirizing this experience, and especially like it's extremely liberal like group of people, and definitely herself included. It feels like at some point she is kind of making fun of herself and taking light on herself, but at the same time she feels so deeply all of her beliefs and
that sums up really. I think that sums it up really well, like why I liked it so much, I think.
And I feel like that's so unique amongst writing and authors, that and a really difficult thing to do. So it's impressive.
And that also speaks to how well it achieves its own goals, probably. Because I would probably give this a 9. I think this book is exactly what she was trying to write. It feels maybe an 8. Because I feel like, there is that perhaps bit where it kind of loses momentum a little bit. Okay, I'm going to 8 because I think actually, there's that section in the second half where it loses perhaps a little bit of momentum. Yeah.
Oh, 7 or 8. I would also give it an 8 because I think she is very clear about what she was wanting to do in this.
Contribution to the conversation. Like, I would rate this really highly because I think that there's not enough books about women in their 40s. There's not enough books about women, like middle-aged women, menopause, women of that age having desire and feelings, and what are like weird, I can't speak to it personally, but just like freedom. And I just think it's saying interesting things and delving into interesting conversations without like shame. And I think you can see from how much it's obviously had a mixed response, but you can see the way for people who've liked it, it's clearly like really meant something to a lot of people. So 8 or I'd probably give it an 8 or a 9. It's a good, I mean, it certainly starts conversation. Like, you can't read this book and just be like, I feel totally neutral about this book.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and yeah,
it's an
a really
interesting
good point.
book.
Yeah, and it's definitely one that I actively want to talk about people with and find out what they think of it. And so, yeah, it was such a great surprise. Find that you had such a positive response to it. So I'd give it an 8 too.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with 8. And then how much I give it the prize of the novel. So I'm going to give this a 9 because if I was awarding it, this is almost definitely, I think, what I would give it to. So 9 for me. Because 10 is like, if I was judging, I would give it to a Little Trickery. So 9 is of this 6 books, this is the one I give it to.
And I'm going to be a bit harsher because, just thinking about my overall response to the book and thinking about it in the context of other books, I probably give it a 6.
Yeah. You need to bring your score down though, because you see, look, you're going to come up quite high anyway.
It is, but...
the nature of these things. Right. Book number 3.
Okay, The Persians, and I'm so curious again to hear what you made of this book in your overall.
I didn't like this at all.
Okay.
This is my least favourite book by a long way. I can't believe it was shortlisted. I didn't like it at all.
Wow.
I thought it was actively bad. I really hope no one involved with it is watching.
But I disagree. I really enjoyed this book. I'm sorry.
Oh, really?
I did. I enjoyed it.
Okay, why? Tell me why.
I will. The dynamic between the different characters, the women in this family, it almost instantly made me think of, and I don't know if this is like fair of me to compare this to you, but it made me think of the TV show Absolutely Fabulous, because of the female central character who is so fabulous but also so monstrous, the aunt in this
I can see that.
family, and then her relationship with her niece, rather than the daughter in Ab Fab, who is much more sensible and always trying to talk her down out of doing saying things which are going to get her into even more trouble. And so I enjoyed how outrageous she was as a character and outspoken she was in her opinions, and following this. I mean, it's kind of like an absurd kind of like premise, but then it becomes gradually more serious as she's accused of, the aunt is accused of prostitution, and then following this case through, and how the family come together and the different generations of the family, and what this says about their Iranian background and their understanding of their heritage, their interpretation of it, their own mythologizing of their own past as a family, and then coming up against evidence of the reality of that, both of wider nation and their families as themselves. And also it slightly reminded me of, there's this amazing movie from the early 20th century called The Women, it's which is one of my favorite movies of all time, and focused.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. with Joan Crawford, and have you seen that?
Am I getting confused with something else?
There was a remake of it, which I've not seen, which I've heard is really bad. But
I think I may have confused with Meg Ryan in it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, early 20th century. I was like, was it me? I was like, it was more recent.
No, there was an original black and white version with Joan Crawford
and
Rosalind Russell, and a really great cast of women.
I've seen the remake, which really is a bad film. That's why I was
okay. Yeah. Which I've not seen and not going to watch because I've heard only bad things. Yeah. But as I loved how in this novel the men were kind of always in the background, very much second fiddle to all of the women and everything that was going on in their lives, and took prominence, and so I just found it a really refreshing and enjoyable read. I thought there were some aspects of it which were a bit clunky. There was a narrative strand which was narrated by someone who had died, which I didn't think worked as well at all. And but at the same time, the overall energy of this book, I just appreciated and enjoyed, and I know it put some readers off reading about characters acting so badly, but I found it fun. So that's why I enjoyed and appreciated this book.
The main issue for me is that I didn't like the writing style, at all. I really didn't like how it was written, which means that I agree, like in terms of like I thought it was an interesting concept and interesting ideas in terms of heritage and the Iranian Revolution and the generation thing, but because I just didn't like the way it was executed, the different narrative voice. I didn't care what happened to any of them. They felt very like removed from me. They always felt like fictional devices to me. So I never really I always just felt like I was reading a novel with invented people. I didn't really care. Like the court case as well, it's not actually in it that much. Like, and Shireen is just like the character. She's absurd. And like you say, she's fabulous, but she's not. Like, she's so selfish in a way that didn't feel rooted for me. Like, I didn't feel like we ever had justification for how half of these people were acting. And I thought the way she like shoots it all down at the end, like, it's just felt a bit silly to me, her choosing to like, and I understand the rationale behind it of how like she never really understood and how like, and like this idea of like the truth being freedom, like, but like, it just didn't work for me. I felt like Shireen and Elizabeth's voices as both like terrible mothers were kind of like too similar, even though they had such like the differences of leaving and staying should have made more difference to their like, there was not enough variation in the voices. Do you know what's interesting actually, given that you liked it and I didn't, is that at times it reminded me of why I don't like Alif Shafak's books.
Okay.
There was like a formality to the writing style that was consistent across all the voices, and that was an issue I had with the Tree book.
Right. Island of Missing Trees.
We have women who have had very different upbringings in different countries and times, and the cadence of their voices was often very similar. Like the sentence structure and the cadence felt too similar for these different women to me. And also, again, the whole like the thing with the dead character felt a little bit like it's narrated by a fig tree, you know, like it had it had that kind of feel for it to me. And I thought it was kind of self-consciously provocative as well, like explicit in a way that sort of felt a bit like ooh, rather than like purpose. You know, there's a character where teenagers have clumsy anal sex. Like I don't know, doesn't do anything for me. And like, I was just a bit like, I don't know why. I don't know. It felt, a lot of the kind of explicit stuff felt like provocative without purpose. And I really, you know, it has a line where it's like, it was all just monopoly money. Is life monopoly life? You can't give a book a prize that says that.
Fair.
I don't, and it's like at the end of a chapter, like it's some like great profound, like, I don't like that. Also, Beta, like, we're supposed to root for her, I guess, but like she just seemed she was kind of as clueless as the rest of them. Like she never really grappled with what it meant to like give all her money away, and like it suggested that like she didn't really understand that, but it never really then interrogated. It felt like a really long setup to like, I almost kind of wanted to read what happened next rather than this. And I felt repetitive. A lot of the stuff in Tehran felt like repetitive themes. I wouldn't finish this book if I wasn't reading it for the prize.
Wow, okay.
I feel like I'm being mean, and I'm immediately having like deep anxiety that people involved with the book are gonna see this and like, okay.
Don't worry about that. I know other readers will relate to.
It's all well and good when you love a book, but then when you don't, it's tricky.
It is.
But I didn't like this book at all.
So.
Okay, your instinct of how much I liked it.
How will we score this?
I mean, I'll give it a 4. And that feels like
Yeah, that's higher than I was expecting. It was purely, just on the experience of it, of how I enjoyed it. I would give it an 8 because I really enjoyed the experience. But also, and I think partly because I was starting from this stance of almost like reading it like a sitcom.
Sure.
That enjoyed all of the drama and humor of it. But then also I found myself getting emotionally involved in it when there's the misunderstanding about her daughter who stayed behind in Iran, and the miscommunication between them, and the grandmother scheming, and that revelation, and how that built up into this larger tension between them. I got emotionally involved in that.
There's always one book that we don't
really have different opinions on.
Yeah. Writing style, this was my main issue with it, so this would be a 4 as well. I just couldn't get on with the writing.
Whereas I would say it's a 6 because I think there's definitely aspects of the writing style that could be improved and worked upon, and as a debut I think it has a lot of great energy to it, but that needs to be sort of refined and worked out of how she carries that through.
How well it achieves its own goals, I would probably rank this slightly higher. I don't think it's executed especially well, but I say higher, I'd probably give it a 5. Well, no, having said that, it's interesting what you say about reading it like a sitcom. I would be curious to know how the writer perceives it.
I've not heard her talking about it.
It's tackling quite serious issues at times, and I it didn't make me laugh. You know what? So actually I'm going to give it a 4 because I don't even feel like I know what the writer was going for. Yeah, 4. Talk to myself out.
Whereas I would say 7 because I think she was going for a complicated portrayal of family history and reckoning with one's own national past and a past of one's personal family, but to do so in a lively and humorous way. And for me, I felt she was fairly effective in doing that.
Interesting, because actually the stuff that I thought was most interesting was the kind of reckoning with the past element, but I didn't think it did it. It never interrogated any of the interesting stuff. There's a passing comment where Niaz wants to pull the turban off as someone who's grown up under the impressive Islamic Republic route.
That's right.
But then
and she gets involved in
Beta's no, that's disrespectful, it's intolerant. And they have a very brief conversation about what it's like actually growing up under that, and what is rebellion and what is tolerance. And I thought that was interesting, and it was passing conversation. I just wanted a lot more of that, actual nuanced interrogation of what that means. And it felt like I didn't feel like it succeeded in that really a lot, because it sort of went to kind of more I didn't really feel like it really dug into any of that stuff that I wanted it to, whilst also not really finding it particularly funny or lively. Sort of as in I wanted it could be more ab fab or more getting into it. Contribution to the conversation. I am interested, I like the concept of the novel. I thought I was going to enjoy it. I do like what the goal, I don't even know what the goal is, but I think it's a good concept for a novel, but I don't think it's executed well. So I would maybe give it a 5.
Hearing you talk about that and the issues that it touches upon, but then doesn't explore more deeply, then I can see that it'd add as much to the conversation as it could. So I would give it a 6 then.
And then finally, how much I give it a prize over other novels. I mean, I feel like I have to give this a 1 because this is the only book on the list that I would actively feel, no, that's not true, there's 2, that this is more than the other one. I feel bad saying this, but I think this is an absurd book to say is the best book by a woman. I think holding this up as the best book by a woman of the last year is nonsensical to me, which feels cruel, and I'm having that crisis again, but I really feel like this would be an odd book to give a prize to. I'll give it a 2.
Well, and for me, even thinking about in a wider context of all books and books that I appreciated and enjoyed more, then I would also rate it fairly low and give it a 4 because I would be really shocked and surprised
in the context of these 6 books. Okay, halfway through, tell me everything. So this is interesting because I have never read Elizabeth Strout before,
and I've read almost all of her books, so we're coming at this from very different angles.
I think that's interesting because so many people whose taste I trust love her, and I was just okay. But I think because I have zero emotional relationship with these people coming in, and everyone's like, but I love Lucy Barton. But if you read this book by itself, I've never met her before. And I think that whilst I didn't actually love her writing style, but I also totally appreciate that if I come into it with these emotional relationships with these characters, it would be a really different reading experience. Having said that, that's why I don't think it's a good book to win a prize, because I don't think you could just pick it up. I think you can, and surely they win a prize that lots of people will buy and enjoy, and I don't think it really works by itself. I was just like, cool, here is this collection of people I have no emotional relationship with. That just like, I cared that
I mean, she does try to do a lot of work of explaining their backgrounds and
it doesn't land if you don't. Like, you technically you have the information, but you don't have the emotions, because you can't build up the emotion of it. You can understand it like on a like plot perspective, but there's no way you can shortcut reading 6 novels about these people. And that's just the nature of writing what is essentially like it's like a series of connected standalones. So that's more just of a like critique, more of like its place on the shortlist rather than the book. I didn't love her writing style. If I was going to say something awful, I would say it's Marilyn Robinson for beginners. It's a very straightforward style of writing.
It is, yeah.
And I don't love the kind of like, oh, Bob, what are we going to do with you? Like, that's just not my taste. And then like, there's one point where it says like, he thought it couldn't get worse. Paragraph break. It got worse. And like, I don't know, that's just, but that's just like not to my, that level, that like kind of straightforward, kind of conversational style of like, here's what this, like, it just is not my taste. I can see also that it would be improved by having read all of them and being used to that rhythm, but coming in completely blind, I was just a bit like, okay, I had a perfectly nice time reading it, but I like just don't have, I was just like, okay, I need to read Lucy Barton, I guess. I am going to read My Name is Lucy Barton. And okay, like, Olive, like, she has a whole book, but like, just here she's like a grumpy old lady, and like, you get like, obviously,
and she's always grumpy, Whereas, for me, having read all these books, feeling very invested with these characters, but also as somebody who was raised and grew up in the state of Maine, and very familiar with the landscape, the culture, the people, and so much in this book resonated for me personally of knowing about that experience and being able to relate to it. And so it is really difficult for me to disentangle and try to think about this book in a critical way as a kind of standalone book shortlisted for a prize outside of this context. And within the context of me just physically reading this book, I read it aloud to my husband, and so had the whole experience of dramatizing the voices, coming up with different voices for the different characters, and enjoying it together, which is such a different experience from just reading it on your own. That we were able to laugh and feel teary eyed at certain poignant moments in it, and seeing how these characters have evolved and changed, and especially, I think it's really interesting the take it has on Lucy Barton, because I feel like it's much more critical of Lucy in this book, whereas in the previous books I've really empathized with her a lot more, and because it's a book that it's primarily, I think Bob is really sort of at the center and focus of this book, seeing Lucy in a slightly different context, and also with Olive at a very late stage in her life, and still being so feisty, but also a bit more contemplative, and so seeing where she went with these characters and taking all of that into account. My personal enjoyment of this book is so high, and I can't.
But that's why it's that, and I think that probably is, a lot of people are going to have one of our experiences with it because of just the nature of the book. I mean, as a book on a shortlist, I just think it's a bit of a weird choice, honestly.
And which is why I didn't guess it would be on the longest, because I thought that would be quite a thing to put a book in a series like this.
So, like, I would have to give it a 5 for just how much I liked it, because, like, it felt quite a neutral reading experience. I didn't dislike it, but I just, like, I felt the absence of those emotional relationships with those characters, and the writing style was just, okay. But that's, like, a taste. That was a taste thing.
Yeah, and that's fair.
It was a very neutral experience for me.
So I have to rate it very high because I have such a connection with it. So I'd give it a 10 for pure instinctive how much
Great.
I enjoyed it.
I can see that. Writing style, it's not my taste, but it's obviously a very intentional thing. So that's very much more of just a taste thing. But for me, it's a 6. I like a long, whimsical sentence, you know?
Yeah. Whereas I would say in 8, because I think the style of it, it is very straightforward in a way, but gradually I think is probing deeper issues and taking that approach to it, I think is opening the reader up to experiencing and contemplating aspects of life from a certain angle that wouldn't come across in another way. So
yeah. How well it achieves its own goals. Like, I would probably rate this as an 8, maybe even a 9. Like, it clearly, she's hugely in control of her craft and her writing and her characters and her world. I think she's doing exactly what she's trying to do. It's hard for me to assess it's hard to come at it as an individual. I'm gonna give it an 8.
Okay, wow.
I think that I feel like I've watched like the 7th episode of a TV show that everyone else has been watching, and it's not for me to say whether it's like good or not. I can just be like, you know, coming in with a slightly random perspective. I think it's a weird book to shortlist, but like as a book, I'm not the right person to interrogate and analyze this book because I haven't read the rest of them.
Whereas I feel like, I can be more critical of it because I am so invested in the series. And I think she did set herself a really high goal with what she was trying to achieve in this book, and really trying to do 3 different things all at the same time, of trying to progress the lives and stories of these characters that she has been building up over multiple books, as well as introducing a new plot line of kind of murder mystery of a woman who has died and the son that is accused of killing her, and these are new characters to
I did
the
care
story.
about that, and that's
okay.
I was going to ask you actually if you'd met which of the characters you'd met before, and that perhaps that is, if that makes sense, perhaps as to why that's the bit I felt the most emotionally invested in, because
it's a new storyline and new characters
there, and I feel like it made me think I would have got more, and I might enjoy other ones more. That was definitely the thing I was the most emotionally invested in. Because like when Lucy marries William, I'm like, okay, I don't really know how I'm supposed to feel about this. I don't really have any strong feelings about this. Whereas with that, because it's all contained, I cared, and I think that spoke to the fact that she obviously knows what she's doing. It's just that,
Whereas but also I think, the third main thing she was trying to do in this book was, for people who haven't read the books before, introduce into an understanding of these characters and their backgrounds, if they hadn't necessarily encountered them before. Which I mean, obviously I can't personally assess, but from your response, although I have heard from some readers who haven't read other books in this series, that they did still really enjoy this and push them to go back to the other books. So
from my perspective, it surprises me to hear that you think that this is a book that's supposed to introduce people to the world, because for me I felt pretty shut out of it. Definitely.
And I mean, for me, reading those sections, I kind of felt like, well, I know all of this information already. Here she is putting in a little backstory, just to clue readers into these characters. And so for me, and which I don't feel like was so obtrusive that it hindered my enjoyment of the story at all. And it's nice if you're watching a long or reading a long series of books to get a little refresher of like, that was their thing. It didn't feel, but that I think it's a very high bar, and a lot she was trying to do in one single relatively short book, and so for me it felt like it didn't entirally achieve all of those things. So I would rate it only a 6 on how well it achieves its own goals.
This is interesting. It's interesting. Interesting. Polar opposite responses.
And it makes these categories, draw in a lot more to the conversation, I think, than
a contribution to a conversation. I'm not really sure what a conversation is trying. I mean, what do you call people from Maine? Mainers.
Mainers or maniacs if you're not being nice.
I don't know if it's
people from Massachusetts call
really?
Mainers maniacs.
I don't know. Not to be rude, I wouldn't say I'm like emotionally invested in conversations around Maine myself.
No, and that's fair enough.
So I'd probably give this a 5, maybe even. I don't know. It was such a neutral reading experience. Like I didn't have an actively bad time, but like I feel like it didn't add anything or enrich anything for me. It's like such a neutral experience. So 5, I guess.
And I feel like it does add a bit to, like, in thinking about issues to do with later life and how just because we get older doesn't mean we don't have new or complicated relationships or friendships that where tensions develop of like, oh, is this going in a more romantic direction? Is it more what form companionship takes in later life? And also I think it kind of which really sort of stands out in comparison to the other books of having kind of a male central protagonist. Whereas
is Bob a new character?
Oh no, he's very well established.
Just like,
oh,
seems I like.
Bob's so sweet.
Yeah, he's sweet, but like I didn't need to read a 250-page novel about him.
Okay.
Like,
yeah,
I'm like, cool. Like, I wish you well, Bob.
I thought it was so endearing, his like tension and wondering if his companionship with Lucy was going to develop into a romance, and but also all of his issues with his brother that have been built up over multiple books, and which I can appreciate you might not understand that kind of comes to a head slightly in this book. So I mean. And I think there's subtle also kind of conversation it adds to social and economic inequality within communities, which is specific to Maine, but also speaks to the larger country and things that are going. So I'll give it a 6. Okay. Long-winded way of saying I'll give it a 6.
How much to give it a prize over other novels? So this is my kind of, after the Persians, this would be my least. But not because, as I've said, not because I necessarily actively disliked it. I just feel like this is a kind of odd book to be shortlisted and an odd book to win because of its nature and its place within the kind of linked series that she's doing. So I would give this a 4 because I think it would be I think it would be a strange book to give the prize to. But that speaks to more just as a prize winner rather than of the book.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would only go slightly higher and say 5 because, I think it would be a very strange choice. I mean, I'd love to see Elizabeth Strout celebrated in this way, but at the same time, she's a much lauded author, much read author, very popular author, and has got a load of attention. And so partly, I just sort of feel like it would be nice to see one of the debuts get a prize over this.
Yeah. Okay, penultimate book, The Safekeep. So this is probably the book that's had the most attention so far because it's on the Booker shortlist.
Booker shortlist last year, and has been nominated for other prizes as well. Yeah,
I hadn't read it before this, and I thought it was excellent.
Great.
It's not a book I feel like evangelical about, but I thought it was excellently done. I thought it was very moving. I did see what was good. I felt like it was. I like understood what was going to happen quite early on.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't know if it's not a, it's not a thriller. Like that's not necessarily. I'd be curious to know, like, how much it was. She wanted it to feel like a kind of twist, and how much she was expecting people to kind of pick up on that. But I think inevitably when there's something like that, and you feel like you are like, oh, is it going to be this? You get quite focused on. That.
And I think she probably intended it to be quite gripping because so something for me about this book is, and that I kind of had in my head going into it, is I listened to a short interview with the author. I'm talking about how Sarah Waters Fingersmith was a major influence on this book.
That makes sense.
Which makes sense. And but then also probably unfairly I was like comparing this to Fingersmith while reading it, which really isn't fair. But I think it was probably intentional that she wanted there to be kind of twists and turns going throughout it, and reveals, and that there were. I think.
I really enjoy. I think it's excellently written. I think it conjures the sense of place very well. I think it has the main two women are very, very brilliantly and beautifully written. I was pleasantly surprised that it had a sort of happy ending. I feel like this sort of book often doesn't. I thought I was going to like cry at the end, and then I was like, oh, nice.
Yeah, and it could have gone a very different way. Yeah,
which I kind of was expecting it to. I thought, like as a character study, the two central women were fascinating. I thought it was really excellent. I give it an 8 probably on overall. I think really like hard to particularly fault, whilst also perhaps kind of lacking that like I'm excited to like push it into people's hands sort of feeling. So I give it an 8.
Yeah, and I'd also give it an 8. For me, the book worked much better as it went further along. I felt like the first section lingered a bit too long in her awfulness, and
I can see that.
And I was like, okay, why is she with this way? And of course, things are revealed, and she changes over time, and their relationship changes over time. Yeah.
It's interesting just not to go back to the Persians, but like, I guess I felt like I really understood why she was like she was, and I felt so much more empathy for her, just in terms of like unlikable characters. Writing style, I thought was beautiful. Really liked that. Maybe even a 9. I thought this was really beautifully written. You know what? All the books, there's quite a lot of sex in these books. Several of them have explicit sex scenes in, and this was probably my favourite. It's genuinely sexy.
Very well.
So I feel like it's done right tonally.
Yeah, I really craved a pair. Well,
fair. I would give this a 9 in writing style. I think. I thought it was really beautifully written.
Yeah, I'd give it the same, a 9, because I think the writing is excellent.
How well it achieves its own goals. I also think this is probably pretty high. I think it feels like a writer who's really in control of what they're doing. It felt paced well. I've struggled to think of a reason not to give it a 9.
Yeah, I do too, because I feel like each of the 3 sections of the book are very distinct. They all progress the story along and the characters, and say something much bigger about how we grapple with our national past and who belongs places, and our perceptions about that.
I very much want this or All Fours to win, and I sort of tilt between which is the one, and I think All Fours just feels kind of so... It gave me a bit of a zhuzh in the way that this one doesn't, but I arguably think this is the better book. But those two are the two that I think are kind of the standouts. Anyway, so you go...
Mine's also a 9, for how well it achieves its own goals.
Contribution to a conversation. Again, I think it's still pretty high. I like reading stories about queer women, especially historically. I think it's interesting reading about their lives and how that factors it, the time and the place they were living, factors into their identities and then their journeys with that. And also, as you said, like, it's an interesting conversation about who belongs where and how we grapple with whose house it is, and like, and the fact that Isabel was a child when her family was, and like how much responsibility she has as a child for what's right. And it speaks to bigger conversations about how we grapple with reparations and things where it wasn't any of us doing the things, but like how we grapple with that.
This is the world we inherited,
like interest, and then like what we owe to other people, and I think of really interesting conversations. So I would say 8, 9, 8. I'm gonna go with 8.
Yeah, I'd go with 8 as well. Yeah.
This is the one we've been. Look, we have exactly. This is the most unified.
We've
given the same scores.
Nice.
How much I give it a prize over other novels? I would give this an 8 because this is my second favourite / maybe favourite / maybe I think it's a better book than All Fours, but All Fours has a bit more of excitement to it for me. So I'd be delighted if this won as well. Like I'd be very happy. I'd give this one an 8.
Yeah, and I'd give it a 9, I think.
Yeah?
Because, feels to me like one of the strongest on the list. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think so.
We're unified on this one. So our last book,
Fundamentally.
I really enjoyed this one. As someone who grew up in a very intense religious community, I thought that she really, there was some lines, like I sent a lot of pictures to friends I grew up with in the church, and like my sister, she like really articulates some of the weirdness of that very, very well, and especially speaks to like when you're in the process of kind of leaving and grappling with that. And you know how there's a great line about how, like, you know, pick and choosy sometimes religious people can be, and like how you choose to kind of ignore the stuff that doesn't sit well with what you want to do. And I just thought she wrote really, really articulately about that experience of growing up as a like modern young woman in a very, very intense religious community, in the process of leaving that, and how it impacted your relationship with your parents. And
relationship with the mothers.
It really well, like, as someone who's had not the same but equivalent experiences, I recommended it to a lot of people who grew up in the same way that I did and have since left. And it's very funny. It really made me laugh. I loved how irreverent it was. I think books about faith sometimes tip into either being very critical, like idiot religious crazy people, or it sort of is a very like serious interrogation of faith. And I loved reading something, again, I don't know, my reaction to this book is really rooted in my personal experiences, because I really loved reading something so irreverent and emotionally honest but funny about faith. You know, the girl that she meets in the camp is so funny, and I love how it grappled with the issues at the end of fundamentalism and different faiths, and our expectations of what was going to happen, and who, you know, where people were going to end up. And I thought like the end perhaps was like a little, like, it was very neat at the end, wasn't it, in a way that, but like I kind of don't begrudge that too much, because it's, you know, it's quite big, complicated, like you can't like solve the situation it's talking about in a like a you know, so I don't begrudge her giving the characters a hopeful ending. I would say the thing it's probably the most commercial. Well, no, the Persians. I kind of am taking the Persians out of consideration because I don't know how to compare that book to the rest of them. If you take the Persians out of consideration, this is like, you know, and I don't mean that as an insult at all. I just mean that like it's, you know, it's like a funny, fast,
very readable
book, and that's good. I could see it doing well, like commercially. I mean, I think it already is, and it'll be interesting because it does take like, it is irreverent, and like it will be interesting. Like it doesn't shy away from kind of making some jokes, you know, and you know the author's identities and experiences allow her to make those jokes, and I really enjoyed reading them.
Yeah, and it's so interesting hearing you relate to it from the religious angle, as me, someone who doesn't come from a very strong religious background at all, and yet I related to the book very strongly in a different way, and without going into like too much personal detail, but one of the main reasons I first left the US and came to the UK was because I had a breakup of a relationship, and partly wanting to go to another country and say like, look at this amazing, fabulous life I have, to my former partner, and that's like strongly what motivates her to take this job and to move to Iraq, and so I related to on that level, and then sort of like fumbling with like, what did I do? Now I'm in this entirely new place. I'm a bit out of my depth, don't really know what I'm doing, but having to feel your way through that experience. And on my like personal enjoyment level of this book, I really connected with it on that level, and also I'm someone who loves a cocktail at a tiki bar, so which is very shallow and silly.
No, that's a great,
but also as like having really followed the story through news articles and podcasts of Shamima Begin and her story of a British woman from Asian background, young woman who joined ISIS and then had her British nationality taken away because of her actions, and following a case like that through this fictional context, I found really engaging and interesting.
Because I would say that's an obvious, like it's right, like that's a fiction, like that's the character that's
I assume must have
right?
Inspired her, and there are a number of parallels of like when Shamim first left, she took a lot of sweets with her, which that she knew she wouldn't be able to get there.
Talking about like, it's funny and irreverent, but like it's also pretty gut punching at times.
Yeah,
I think when
the reality sort of hits,
the reality of the hopelessness of the world and these situations for these people and women in particular, like it doesn't shy away from really kind of making the complexity and difficulty of this and how hard it is for people who are trying to make a difference to like, get anywhere because of the bureaucracy and red tape and what happens to good intentions when encountering a system that has so many problems and there's corruption there, and it's I would give this an 8. I really liked this book. I raced through it.
Yeah, I'd rate it very highly too. Yeah, I'd say an 8. I'm like between 8 and 9, but I'll say 9 because I just really. I like it would be. We're not going to get into halves because then we get absurd. But it's a very strong 8 for me. Yeah. Writing style, I really enjoyed this. It's not like a literary novel, I would say. Yeah, I characterise it as like a very down to earth sort of writing style. A very voice that feels familiar and that you like immediately understand.
But it's very sharply written and tightly written, and it's funny. So I would say probably. It's a difficult one because I'm like, am I like it doesn't feel fair to knock a point off for it not being a literary style because it's not trying to be a literary style. It really succeeds at the voice it's going for, so I'm going to give it an 8.
Whereas
it really made me laugh.
Yeah, I'd give it an 8 too.
How well it achieves its own goals. Again, I would rate it like, I think this is really in control of itself and tightly done. Quite highly.
And I think she's set herself a big challenge with this book to write about such serious subject matter in a way that is humorous and that people can relate to. I think, while still staying true to the particular experience of both of the central women in this book.
I give it an 8 again.
8. Yeah.
Contribution to the conversation. Again, I think it's really tackling things that I haven't really particularly read about in fiction, and it's doing it with a really distinct tone. It's hard, like but it's hard to merge that like irreverence and humour with such weighty topics, and she does it really well. I give it an 8. Again, I give it everything an 8. I guess I really.
I'd also give it an 8.
I really liked this. How much I give it a prize over other novels? Again, it's another one. I would be more than happy for this to win, even though I would probably go All Fours or the Safekeep book. I think they're probably slightly like in a different category for me, but this would be probably my next pick if I was judging.
Whereas for me, I'm really torn between the Safekeep and this. Really, kind of my
highest. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, great. So I would probably go 7 for this. I'd be totally happy if this won, even if it isn't my personal favourite. But I think it's a really great book, a really great debut, and really, that I really enjoyed. Be more than happy for it to win, even if it wasn't my favourite.
I'd give it an 8. Yeah, I think.
Okay,
so we are going to do some maths now.
Okay.
Now for the overall reveal of our scores and who we, judging by this point system, would be our winner.
So, in last place is the Persians, which got 50 points out of 100 points collectively. In 5th place is Tell Me Everything, which got 63 points out of 100. which actually we didn't. I gave it 28 and you gave it 35. I think that even though we had different, like we both agree that it's a kind of perhaps not the like an organic fit for the prize. However much we liked it or didn't like it. Yeah. In fourth place is Good Girl, which has 72 points. So we have a jump there. In third place is All Fours with 78 points. In second place is Fundamentally with 80 points, only 2 points more than All Fours. And our points scorecard winner is the Safekeep with 85 points. So our top three were relatively close. So the Safekeep, Fundamentally, and All Fours. Good Girl just behind them, and then Tell Me Everything of the Persians kind of trailing a bit. But I feel like that's, yeah, as I say, I think I would go for All Fours. It feels like an exciting book to pick that will start conversations. And I would like to meet Miranda July. But I think the Safekeep would be an excellent winner. And I would also be more than content for Fundamentally to win. I wouldn't be mad if Good Girl won.
Whereas, yeah, I'd push for the Safekeep to win with Fundamentally very close behind that, and that would be my preference.
Yeah. We're largely aligned.
Yeah.
No, but that's who do you think will win? I think it will be All Fours on Safekeep.
Yeah, question. Yeah, I think,
I think it's going to be All Fours. But is that just because
those really make sense, like on a like bookie level of that, yeah. Because they've got so much prize attention before, and yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. It would be a wonderful surprise if Fundamentally then won and came out as a kind of like discovery and one that I think.
I could see that happening, but I think Miranda July might get it.
Whereas, yeah, I feel fairly confident that the Safekeep will take it.
Okay.
So
I wouldn't be. I'm torn between those two. I would be pretty surprised if it wasn't one of those two. But I don't know though. That if you think about what the judges have been valuing, there's clearly a lot of these books are quite irreverent. A lot of them have sex in them, and like I wonder if like there's a few books about older women. And I do wonder if All Fours speaks to like what the judges are valuing.
Although going by that logic, I think you could say that Fundamentally is a really good chance.
No, true. Something in me doesn't think the Safekeep. Actually, I don't think the Safekeep's going to win.
Oh.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it will. I don't know. I don't actually know. You know what? Usually
really at
this point, I actually like have. I pride myself on being good at guessing, and I got it right last year. But this year, I don't have a strong. My gut feeling is Miranda July is going to win.
Okay. We shall see next week. Yeah, it's not long to wait now. But
where I guess I will be avoiding the author of the Persians.
And we haven't touched at all upon the non-fiction list, although, which, I know, you haven't had time to read any of them. I've read 5 out of the 6.
Oh, wow,
amazing. Very studious. But one of my absolute favorites from that list is Agent Zoe. I thought it was such a powerful historical novel about a female revolutionary fighter.
Novel, presumably.
No, did I say novel?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm constantly doing that. Non-fiction history book, Agent Zoe, I thought was such a powerful story and book. Clued me so much into Polish history, the role of women in war and in World War II and after World War II and during the Soviet occupation of Poland, and but was also a very gripping story because there were many life-threatening moments in her battle to try to defend Poland, and I thought it was a really incredible book, but also really fascinating other books on the shortlist that I've read and heard from some readers that find the nonfiction list more interesting than the fiction shortlist. So,
I'm also now querying because my usual tactic for predicting book awards is what is everybody's second favourite, because it takes one person who's just like, I don't like Miranda July, and
cut it out of.
I can see at least one person being like, it didn't work for me, whereas the Safekeep I can see being everybody's second favourite. That's a book people will be able to agree on. We shall see.
We shall see, but let us know in the comments what you think about all of these books, about the prize this year, and yeah, I would love to hear your predictions and wishes for the winner, and very excited to go to the ceremony.
Are you going to vlog it?
Next week? Yeah, I'll make a vlog of the experience, so pray for good weather because it'll be outside in the park, but it'll also, be really excited to see, hopefully a lot of the authors will be there. Hopefully Nina Cherry will be there. Her memoir is on the shortlist for the nonfiction group, which would be really exciting to see. And I'm really hoping Elizabeth Strout is there because I've met her sometimes before, and she and her husband are absolutely lovely. And so yeah. But thank you for watching this very long discussion, in-depth discussion.
Every time we're like, we're going to be quicker, and we never are. So.
No.
Thank you for keeping watching.
Thank you for joining in, and thank you for Anna for doing this with me.
Oh,
as always.
It's my fave. Thank you for always doing all the editing.
It's going to be a job.
I contributed crafts this time.
Yes. Beautifully presented scorecards. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye.
See you again soon.